has audio, no one has video, except for the presenters. So you're safe. We have had like interactive style webinars, which we really love, but it's hard with a large group to have that. So as long as you can hear and see us, then we'll be in good shape. And then anything that you guys, want to share, definitely drop in the chat at any time. Kiley is going to be running that back end stuff for us. So he'll be paying attention to that chat and make sure that nothing gets missed. But we're about just a minute past. I think we can go ahead and get started, and I'm sure we'll have some more people trickle in over the next few minutes. But Kiley, does that sound good to you?
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, welcome everyone. Glad to have you guys with us on this Thursday, at whatever time it is where you are. My name is Kiley Hawkins. I'm one of the co-founders here at Tailored Fundraising, and I'm joining you guys from Nashville, Tennessee. The others on our Tailored team joining us are Jenny Karr, who's also in Nashville, and Deb Evans in Alabama, and they will be co-leading our webinar today. So thank you, ladies, for helping us out with that. And then Lindsay Riggs is helping us with some slides and behind the scenes stuff. She's a valuable member of our team, and she's joining us from Michigan today. So we're really excited to have you guys with us. We're really looking forward over the next hour just to be looking at fundraising for veteran workers. I'm excited to share with you some things, and we're going to be talking about how to keep current partners engaged, how to maximize your current contact list, some tips for raising funds and networking from the field, and then how to plan for fundraising on furlough. So those are just some of the major topics we're going to be covering. We also have a financial analysis tool that we'd like to offer everyone for free at the end of the webinar. So be on the lookout for that. This tool will walk you through pulling together your last 12 months of giving to identify some trends and potential new partners, so you can just be more strategic in your upcoming fundraising efforts. So we're excited to share that with you. And I want to let you know that throughout this webinar, we really do want to hear from you. So on the top left of your screen, you should see a chat button. And this is where you can put any comments that you would like to share with us throughout the call. We're going to be dumping some comments and information in there as well. The second button that I wanted to draw your attention to is the Q&A button. And if you have any questions at any time throughout the webinar, please click that button and put your question in that box. Sometimes there's so much information flowing through the chat that it's easy to lose things. So if you have a question specifically for us, if you wouldn't mind clicking that Q&A button and dumping it in there. This is a live webinar. We all want to learn from each other. So we really do invite you to ask as many questions as you'd like. We're going to do our best to get to all of them, either live or we can text back to you in the Q&A box. So we'll try to answer all of your questions. We're also going to be giving you a few poll questions throughout the webinar, just to get your feedback around your fundraising experience and goals. So be on the lookout for those, and please participate as you'd like. And then finally, I know as Jenny's already mentioned, we want to let you know that because we probably have some people joining us from restricted access areas, we're going to be following some communication guidelines throughout the webinar for safety. So again, thank you so much for joining us, and let's jump in.
Remember the first time you started fundraising? If you were like me, then the thought of asking people for money made you shudder. Remember my coach said, "How do you feel about fundraising?" And I just went, oh. I could not wait for it to be over. And I felt this way because I knew fundraising was going to be hard, and I really, truly just wanted to get it done as fast as possible. But there are a lot of things I learned and things I know now that I didn't then, which is as long as we are in full-time service, we are never done fundraising. But even more importantly, I realized that the work doesn't start when we get to the field. It actually starts with building our partnership team. And we truly believe that fundraising is a ministry. If you're looking at fundraising primarily as raising money to get you or keep you on the field, not only are you in for a rude awakening, but you will miss the blessings of a true partnership where you cultivate relationships with people on the field and off the field. Fundraising is about relationships, and relationships really deserve your time. In speaking with veterans, almost universally, the primary challenge to being fully funded is actually making time to focus on partnership development. So that takes us to our first poll question. Right now, how much time do you spend on partnership development each week? So we've got 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, more than 2 hours, or none. And I would think about a typical week, not an ideal week. Excuse me. Think about your typical week. How much time are you spending on partnership development each week? Multiple responsibilities, fluctuating schedules, the tyranny of the urgent, right? All of these things make it really difficult, not to mention being in an unpredictable culture, make it really difficult, even for the most disciplined and scheduled person, to follow through with their plans. But there are a lot of veterans who admit to not even having a plan at all. Without a plan that is created in advance, most of us are going to be reacting in our relationships with partners rather than pursuing them or building a relationship. So we want to help you make that plan.
And where we see the effects of this in both cases is really in the area of communication, where again, almost universally, our veteran workers feel like they just haven't kept in touch with the partners the way that they feel like they should have. And if I could see your faces right now, I bet many of you are nodding in agreement. And oops, our poll is up. Okay, let's see. How much time do you spend in fundraising development each week? Most common answer is 30 minutes. Wow, 21%, none. Okay, we're hoping to change that for you. We're hoping that you'll get inspired by some of the things that we share in this webinar. And we want that none to not even be there after this webinar. So, okay, we want to challenge you guys to build personal relationships with your partners. Again, if I could see you, it would probably be written all over your face. Wait, you want me to create a strategy for every single one of my partners? I do. The bottom line is that it's really hard to build solid relationships with 75 to 150 people without a plan. And in the end, the relationship ends up becoming more driven by money or the need to ask rather than investing in that partner as a person. So before we discuss anything else, we want to share best practices for engaging with your current partners, because if you're not properly caring for the partners you have, then full funding could be a chronic struggle no matter how many partners come on board. In Philippians chapter 4, verse 16, Paul mentions a relationship with partners who give, but who also receive. And we want to give you some very practical tips that are going to help you to think through and maximize your time so that your partners feel important. We want you to think about the concept of tithing a portion of your time to fundraising every week as a way to honor the Father and also give back to your partners. So essentially, we want you to view this part as a really vital to the work too. So what are some of the things that you could do during that time, and how long will it take? Well, most everyone says, oh yeah, newsletter. And we all know that newsletters, sending them is a great idea. And when we left for the field, we were like, do it. And we thought, oh, we're going to do this once a month. Woohoo. And you know what? It wasn't really too hard to come up with things to write about when we were there at first. And then reality began to sink in. We're in language school for a year. It's not glamorous. And then the work inevitably changes or expands, and we're asked to take on more responsibility, which means that even our best laid communication plan takes a backseat to more pressing matters. We have kids and even less time. And let's face it, for our stay-at-home moms, even less to write about. Projectile vomiting and homeschooling certainly aren't glamorous, and we can barely keep up with the demands of a growing family. Life gets crazy, and letters don't get written. I remember at about the 10-year mark, literally playing rock, paper, scissors with my husband over who was going to write the thing. It had really become a burden instead of a blessing. And I know it's a struggle, but you have to make it a priority. The best tip that I can give you is to resist the urge to send longer updates less frequently, because they're simply just not read. At best, they're opened and skimmed. Keep them short and send them more often. One story, one photograph, and one request to lift up, as well as an expression of thanks, is perfect. And we're actually hosting a webinar next month on how to write an effective newsletter, so we'd love for you to come. Another thing that we recommend you doing is having a social media strategy. Posting regularly only takes a couple of minutes, and it really helps create awareness. It motivates partners to action, and it keeps them not only interested, but engaged. And as we mentioned in our last webinar, the best way to reach that younger generation is going to be through social media. The next one is super important, but it often gets overlooked. Take time every week to check your giving reports. If you notice that a partner has skipped a month, first you want to call your organization's office just to see if their credit card has expired. And if that's not the case, contact your partner. This is your chance to really check in on them and see if everything's okay with their family.
Yes, and that's so huge. You know, don't wait hoping that maybe, you know, things start back up. Just reach out right away, check in. It also helps them know you're paying attention, which is really important. Our final tip is probably the key to having a sustainable partnership team. In addition to the mass communication, you want to plan on staying connected personally with your partners. Now, this might sound a little overwhelming, but we're going to walk through how to make this manageable. So this can look like sending a postcard or a handwritten note, sending an email or a Facebook message, scheduling a time for a video chat, pretty much anything that is from you just to them to check in and connect. Philippians 1:3-4 was super convicting to me when Paul says, I thank the Father in all my remembrance of you, always in every intercession of mine for you all, lifting you up with joy. We're all known probably for adding requests at the bottom of every letter about how our partners can be lifting us up, but how often are we pausing and asking how we can lift them up? My favorite way to connect with partners is to simply send a message and say, how can I intercede for you today? Now, a lot of people shy away from saying this for fear that they won't actually lift that person up. I was one of these people that wasn't really great at keeping people in the front of my mind and always lifting them up. But how I got around it for me was that as soon as I got the response, I would type back how I was lifting them up, what I was saying to the Father for them. And this way I was staying true to my word, but it also really encouraged the partner as well to be able to see that. Because if I was in person, they could hear me saying those words over them. But because I wasn't, this was a great substitute of, hey, here are still the words that are being spoken over you and lifted up to the Father. And it really was a great encouragement to both of us. Now, with clubs, we recommend asking them how often they'd like to hear from you. Okay, so like fellowships or small groups, different kind of groups like that. How do they want you to share information? Who's the best person to connect to? And making sure that you make that connection strong, because I'm sure many of you have had groups fall off, and maybe it was months before you realized there was even a new person. So keeping that consistent connection, make sure that when there are changes like that, you know as soon as possible and you're able to make a fresh connection with a new person. For your partners, and this could be a broad category. Yes, it's definitely people who are financially partnering with you, but it might be people that are partnering in other ways that you feel are really committed. So feel free to broaden that if there are others that you want to stay connected to. I actually put some of my family in this category because I knew if I wasn't really intentional, there were even some family members I wouldn't stay connected to. But we recommend connecting at least every 6 months. So if you are going to see some partners this summer, that counts as a connection, and you should be reaching out again around Christmas. But if you're seeing all of your partners this summer, then it's not realistic for you to connect with all of them again in the same month. So you want to space that out. When my family was serving in Vietnam, I was the primary person to stay connected with our partners. And I found that setting aside 2 to 3 hours a week helped me not just stay on track with what I was hoping to do, but like really accomplish my goals and sometimes even be able to do some extra things. I focused less on a specific number of people to connect with and just did as much as I could within that window of time. Because I found if I tried to connect with 5 people every week, I got really stressed out because sometimes it took me 20 minutes just to write a postcard to one person. So if you can set aside time instead, that is a lot less stressful, and you're still faithful to tithing that time. And whether you connect with one person or 5 people, you're still successful. So this rhythm didn't just make it manageable, but it actually became really enjoyable to stay personally connected with our partners. Now, if you're in a culture like I was, or planning anything is really difficult, try to be as strategic as you can. Maybe you can't do the same day every week, but maybe you can commit to once a week looking at your calendar and trying to pick the best time for that week. In Vietnam, afternoons and evenings were a complete mystery day to day. We could get a phone call saying, you're the guest of honor at this dinner and we're picking you up in 30 minutes. We're like, awesome, we have nothing to do, so that's perfect. And we're, canceling all our plans and moving everything around. So that, I knew afternoons and evenings, we had to keep our plans really loose. But early mornings were typically more predictable. Everyone's getting ready for work. People are going to the market, prepping their food for the day. So it was a little safer time for me to know, okay, it's less likely that I'm going to walk downstairs to my kitchen and there's going to be someone standing in my living room wanting to have tea. So for you, especially if you've been there for any length of time, those pockets of what's the least unpredictable time of the week. And so start creating a plan. Be strategic in that time so that another year doesn't go by without those valuable connections with your partners. And if you truly begin seeing this time as valuable work as well, it could soon become some of your favorite hours of the week.
Mm-hmm. So having that communication plan in place is going to do wonders for the sustainability of your work. But what happens if one of your partners loses their job or gets sick or they need to drop off? Do you wait until the next furlough to raise the funds? No. But unfortunately, that's all too common in our experience. We'd like to encourage you to strive to be at least 105%. We have worked with a lot of veterans over the years, and they say to us most often, so how am I supposed to raise funds if I don't have enough contacts? But once we connect, we usually discover that they have a whole list of contacts that they haven't even thought of intentionally maximizing, their newsletter list. So I want to ask you guys, how many people are on your newsletter list? Let's take a quick minute for a poll question and think about, on your current newsletter list, how many people do you send those newsletters to? Is it 100 to 250, 250 to 500, 500 to 750? Or are you like over the 750 mark, which is pretty impressive? So with that list of partners in mind, think about how many of them are currently partnering. Typically, when we ask that question, you might identify 20 to 40 people from that list who are current financial partners. And if that's the case for you, that means that we've automatically identified dozens, if not hundreds, of people that you could talk to about a financial partnership. What a great group to start with. These are people who are already connected to the work. They've already shown interest in hearing about what's going on. So let's start there. And what we want to do to start is just to segment the names on that list into 4 groups. So we want to take a look at the first group, but before we do that, let's look at our poll results. Most of you guys, 100 to 250, so 61% of you have that many people on your list. So think about that. If 20 to 40 people out of those 100 to 250, or the next common one was 250 to 500, you guys have tons of people on that list who could be potential partners. So we're going to start there. So let's start with the first group, segment A. Segment A is your current partners. These are the people who already know and are interested in a financial partnership. But there's one more thing that you can invite them to do. The first thing that you can invite them to do is just to increase their giving. So if someone's partnered with you for at least a year, it's perfectly acceptable to show them your gratitude for their partnership and to ask them to consider increasing for the coming year. Another way that they can help is by connecting you to their friends and to their family members. A great way to do this is hosting a get-together. I love hosting a get-together, but guess what? Not everybody is cut out to be a host. So just that simple introduction through email can be helpful. And even when you're talking about a group, it doesn't have to be a large group. It can just be 1 to 2 other people. Just make sure that your partner understands that it's not the number of people that they get to this meeting that matters, but that the level of their interest is high. We would much rather have just one very interested person there than 10 people who just showed up to be warm bodies. So segment B is the people who've given in the past, either one time or ongoing. And this is a really great group to connect with because they've already shown that they're interested in a financial investment at some point. So the greatest indicator of somebody's inclination to give is if they've given in the past. And some of them may not have even been aware that they could partner monthly, so they just gave a one-time gift. I literally had a client this week tell me that someone asked if they could do a large one-time gift, and instead of her automatic response of yes, she decided that she would let them know that monthly partnership would actually help her more. So she asked them if they could break that large amount down into smaller monthly gifts. And they said yes, because they wanted to be helpful, but they needed her to help them to help her. So the people that have partnered previously, get them on the team, but also some of those people might be people that actually stopped giving due to a credit card error, or people who didn't even sign up in the first place. Like they said they were going to, but never did, and they weren't followed up with. Maybe life got difficult, causing them to have to stop their partnership. Maybe they forgot to start their partnership. Maybe your partnership form got stuck under months of mail and they have no idea that they don't even remember that they said that they were going to do it. Whatever the reason may be, time's passed and their difficult circumstances may have passed as well. So whatever the situation, it could be a good time to check back in and just invite them to consider either a monthly or an annual partnership. Segment C is everybody who hasn't financially partnered in any capacity, but they're on the list and you'd like to ask them to consider it. So if you've reached out before and they've said no, it can be worth trying again, especially if at least a year has passed. And segment D covers those people that you're not ready to ask, likely because you have no idea who they are. If you've been part of speaking at a lot of clubs, a lot of groups, and you had a lot of strangers sign up, there might be people on your list that you don't know at all. So with this group, it's time to start building that relationship. If you're going to be on furlough, one idea is to just reach out to them to let them know that you're going to be visiting their area if you know that they're in that area. And while you're there, you would love to connect with them either in person or over video chat just to get to know them better and to share a personal update of what the father's doing in the work. I recently had a client for whom this was the case. He had been into multiple clubs, spoken there over multiple years. I'm talking long-term here, 20 years. And he had a ton of people sign up and he had no idea who some of the people were or how they'd even gotten connected to the work. So we talked about the importance of just reaching out to them personally, just to thank them and to connect them to the impact of their partnership. And so he set a goal of contacting a certain number each week. And despite his fear that things might be potentially really awkward, in faith, he picked up that phone and he made those phone calls, and he was so surprised and so encouraged to hear how much they cared for his family and the work that was being done. And he told me that the calls were actually fun. And he is not alone. I've had that same experience with others. So remember, this doesn't have to wait either until furlough. You can connect with these people from the field through multiple apps, and we're going to discuss how to do that more in depth later on.
All right, so your lists are segmented, right?
Oops.
We've walked.
Jenny, can I interrupt real quick with a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Yeah, so Madison's asking, she says they've reached out to one-time givers from about a year ago, connecting and asking if they would consider supporting again. Now we aren't able to get any responses from them at all, even happy birthday messages and things like that. Others have responded positively, but several have not. What are we doing wrong, or what are we missing?
Without being able to jump into a conversation with you and ask 5 more questions. We always like to ask a lot of questions and kind of get the full picture, but often what we see is your personal communication has been weak. The only time they've heard from you is when you are asking for money. Now, you said you've sent like happy birthday messages, that kind of thing. But have there been any other conversations of just, hey, how are you? How's your family? How can we be lifting you up? That kind of connection where you're not asking for anything. Those are really important, which is why we started this webinar talking about that, because that's often what we see when that relationship is kind of weak, then the asks get less and less and less effective. So that could be one reason. Another is that if we are not super like present in people's lives, so I think someone had asked in the chat earlier, what social media do you recommend? Absolutely Facebook and Instagram, top two. Facebook is the most popular in the entire world. So, Facebook and Instagram are definitely the best ways, and be active on social media, because with you not being in person, it's really easy for people to forget about you and forget that they can actually like call you or, like jump on a video chat, or video call. So just trying to stay really active on social media, stay connected with your partner so that they're seeing you on a regular basis, right? Seeing you, even if it's virtually, makes a huge difference. So your only communication should not be through newsletters, and especially if your newsletters are only going out like once a quarter or, once a year for some of us. So I think that that's a really key factor there. The other thing that's really huge in getting a response is frequent follow-up. Okay. Yeah. So reaching out to someone once a month is not enough. If you reach out to someone to say like, hey, we'd love for you to consider giving, or we'd love for you to consider partnering, you need to follow up with them every 3 days for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It feels borderline harassment on our end, because it's like, oh gosh, that's so much. But studies have shown people get literally thousands and thousands of messages every day. So if you are reaching out once a month, I mean, they may have even forgotten who you are at that point, right? That's an exaggeration. But they've definitely forgotten about your message. So every 3 days, follow up, 2 weeks, make it really focused. And that is a lot more effective. So I would say follow-up strategy is key in that.
Yeah. And I that's what I was thinking. Madison responded again and just said, is that not annoying? I think that's what I'm afraid of, becoming a pest. And Madison, we see this all the time. And you have to really, it's hard to do this. You have to put yourself in the position of the person you're trying to contact. And you can't, because their world is, I mean, we get bombarded with messages all the time. So no, that is not annoying. In fact, I mean, Jenny mentioned every 3 days for at least 2 weeks. And I would say that's not much at all.
Right.
So, and it's not because they don't want to hear from you. It's because they've got so much going on. Mm-hmm. So, your first couple of messages are probably just ignored because they're one of hundreds that they get every day. So no, and I think that's probably one of the biggest things, is just that follow-up strategy. Can I throw a few more questions at you guys? Thank you so much. You already mentioned Dave's question about social media. Definitely Facebook and Instagram, you guys mentioned were top. Megan asked, what's a good name for a fundraising meeting when inviting people? I guess we don't want to use, ask them for a fundraising meeting. So is there another way to kind of phrase that, that ask to get together?
Right. We don't want to call it money, money, money. Right.
Yeah.
That's an interesting question. I don't think we've ever gotten that one. Well done. Deb, ideas?
I'm thinking like exciting missions opportunity. Somebody made a cute play on the name of their country. It was something with, I don't think it was Kenya. I can't remember. I wish I had that title. It came across in an email, and I was like, that's so clever that they made a play on that. But even if it's if your partner is inviting other people, they may want to use their name, like in the invitation, like it's I'm inviting you to meet a new friend of mine, or if it's a letter that you're following up. If someone has networked you to another person, you might want to use their name when you're following up with them, so that it's more about the relationship. It's about the opportunity. It's about the relationship. It could even be kingdom investment instead of talking about money, stewardship opportunity, different ways to say financial stewardship, kingdom.
Like stronger together. Like something that communicates one of two things: relationship or impact. So what's the work, so join the work in China, something like that, where it's not just like, hey, come give us money or fundraising event. But it kind of focuses more on that partnership language, relationship language, impact language. There's a lot of different things you could play with there, for sure.
Or even what the people are interested in. So if they're interested in college ministry, or if they're interested in discipleship, come make disciples with us, or build laborers with us. That's why I want to join a team. I don't want to give you money or give you a salary. I want to help change the world. I want to join God in what he's doing in wherever it is that you are.
Yeah. Good question. Love that. Anything else, Kelly?
Nope, not now, but just a reminder to throw any future questions in that Q&A box, and we'll definitely get to them. Thanks.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. So segmenting your list is really important. We know it's time consuming. I hope we're not saying these things like, oh, this is so easy, just do it. Like, we know it's time consuming. These are things we have done. So we are intimately familiar with how much time it takes. But your partnership development efforts will be so much more effective if you do this. So rather than just jumping in and go and be like, oh, I don't have time for that. Yeah, you do have time for it, because what's going to happen is you're going to reach out to people, and it's not going to be as strong of a connection. You're going to be reaching out to contacts, maybe that should be some of the last people you reach out to. And the giving just isn't going to be that great, and the connection isn't going to be as strong. So take the time to segment your list. Cannot stress that enough. So now it's segmented. What's next? What do you actually say? The chances are that so much has happened since your initial messaging or your presentation was developed. And it can be easy to get in a rut. You're just kind of doing the same thing and not spending time refreshing those stories. So we want to ask another poll question, not just for us, but also just awareness for yourselves and each other. When was the last time your message, your presentation, your PowerPoint was updated? So has that been updated in the last year? Has it been within the last 4 years? Or has it been never since your initial fundraising? We want to get you out of that rut, or at least help you think about how to get out of that rut. So developing fresh stories that illustrate a handful of things is important. So you want to illustrate the needs of the people you are serving. You want to illustrate the challenges that you are facing, that you are seeing, and the urgency of staying or returning to the field. Okay, so what are those stories that help people see there's a need for the work, and there's a need for you to be there? What is that story? Stories can also communicate impact or life transformation. Okay, so your need story, but also what stories are you seeing that's showing this work is effective? Okay, so our polls up. 63% of you have done it within the last year. Fantastic. Love seeing that. Just under a third within the last 4 years, and only 10% since initially fundraising. So that's great. We hope that for those of you that have refreshed it in the last year, maybe some of these tips can help you tweak it even more. So story of the needs that you're seeing, and a story of life transformation. What is the Father doing in people's lives in big and small ways? And asking yourself, what would a new partner want to hear about? What would my current partners want to hear about? What is unique about what we're doing? Or maybe what is something that we're doing that people don't realize is really important? It might seem like, oh yeah, okay, that's great. But you can say, no, we're actually seeing a ton of movement here. And finding stories that connect with that. Once that's done, you want to tailor your communication to each segment. Okay, so this is why we talked about making that segment, is because we're going to tailor our communication a little different to each of those groups. So you want to start by sending an email, a Facebook message, or even a physical letter. If you have the capability of doing a physical letter, maybe you have someone back at your home base that, for me, it was my mom. I could say, hey, here's the addresses, here's the letter, and she would print it and mail it for me, because physical letters really do stand out quite a bit. But getting that message out that reminds them of the needs in your area of service and the good work that the Father is doing there. And we're also going to try to share examples with you guys. We know examples are really helpful to have some of that language, so we're going to kind of share some examples as well. But with segment A, let's just walk through each of those. Current partners, you could say something like, thank you for your partnership in bringing the good news to university students. 10 students are now coming regularly to these meetings. Okay, you're communicating that impact. I would like for you to lift up increasing your partnership for the coming year and also helping us find new partners through your family, friends, and fellowships so that together we can equip even more students this year. Now notice here we didn't say, because we're underfunded, there's a shortfall, you know, our salary has increased. We're not focusing on the numbers or the budget or the money. We're focusing on the impact. This is key. Yes, we all understand money is tied to numbers and it's tied to a budget, but that's not what we're inviting people to be a part of. So invite them into the impact. Always communicate the impact and never assume they remember what you do. Our newsletter was literally called Living in Vietnam. And yet we would come home and people would say, oh, how was China? I'm like, well, close enough. Yeah, it's great. So never assume. In all of your communication, you need to be reminding people of the impact of what the ministry is doing. With segment B, past partners, thank you for your previous partnership in bringing hope to the lost in Europe. Would you consider partnering again for this coming year so that together, and then insert your impact. Be really clear in what you want them to do, and have a follow-up strategy. You know, don't just send it and hope they respond, follow up. With segment C, the people who haven't given in the past but might be interested in a partnership now, you know, thank you for your interest, or thank you for staying connected if they're on your newsletter list. And what the Father is doing in Southeast Asia, we would love for you to become a part of the work in Asia through intercession and the financial partnership. You know, would you please lift up if this is something you want to do, and we'll follow up in a few days. Okay, make that follow-up clear. And with segment D, the people that you just need to strengthen a relationship with, you can say, thank you for your interest in what the Father is doing in LA. I'd like to get together to give you a personal update on the work and spend time getting to know you and your family. Okay, reach out, start the relationship. We hear, oh, I don't even know who that person is. Well, guess what? It's time to get to know them. Take the time. But I do want to add, if you get connected with people from segment D and they bring up finances, go ahead and talk about it. If they're already inviting you to have that conversation about partnership and about moving into a more invested role, don't be so stuck in like the plan of like, oh no, we're just having a relationship. If they're bringing it up, the Father's doing something there. And so have that conversation and be willing to say, yeah, we are looking for, you know, people to partner, and we are looking for people to increase. And so give them that opportunity and have that conversation.
All right, so you spent a lot of time getting your content ready. Awesome job. So the next question that we often get is, so how are we supposed to do this while we're on the field internationally? Which has us wondering, how many new partnerships did you gain while you were on the field last year? So let's take a quick poll. How many new partnerships did you gain while you were on the field in 2018? More than 10? More than 5? Less than 5? None, but I really tried. Or none, I just didn't have time, which means none, I didn't really make the time. There's some really, really important things for you to keep in mind when you're trying to have long distance appointments. First of all, you have got to view yourself as the leader of this team. And as much as possible, just like Jenny said, you've got to set that expectation that you're the one who's going to follow up with them. They are so busy, and it's your job to lead them through this process. So make sure that you end each and every correspondence just by letting them know, hey, I'm going to connect with you in a day or two. This is what that could look like. So I'm looking for people who would want to partner with me financially and or in intercession in this life-changing work. If you're interested, I would love to set up a time to talk with you over FaceTime or over Skype. Would you let me know in the next couple of days if that's something that you'd be willing to do or you'd like to do? And if I haven't heard from you by then, I'll reach back out to you. And I'm really looking forward to speaking with you soon. And then be true to your word. A day or two after your letters or your messages arrive, begin calling people if at all possible. or at least messaging or emailing them to see if they've received the letter. And here's another thing, make sure that you ask if they're interested in meeting, because they may not be, and that's okay. Be careful not to assume and just say, so, hey, when can we meet? It's okay for you to offer dates and times that you're available. Just make sure that you add if you're interested in meeting. Another thing is, don't assume that they've read your letter. In every follow-up call or message, you want to be summarizing the mission in just one sentence, and always mention that you're looking for people to partner, both in lifting the work up and investing financially. All right, we've got our polls in. How many partnerships did you gain while on the field? Seems like most people are less than 5, which is good, because that means you guys are trying and you're working on it. Love that about 17% of you weren't able to have any new partnerships. And look at you guys, 10 plus. Way to go. That's awesome. Okay, so let's keep talking about how to do this from the field. People often ask us too about this whole concept of video conferencing, and especially our older veterans who are not so tech savvy. We want to give you some tips for video conferencing. Make sure that you have a good internet connection. This is huge. You need to realize that it might not be your house that has the best internet connection. You actually might have to get up and go somewhere else, just making sure, whether that's at the campus that you're on or a coffee shop, test that internet connection and make sure that it's stable. Also, make sure before you get on that call that you practice good screen presence, including sharing your screen if you're going to show pictures. And if you're at home, make sure you know what's going on in the background. Like, you don't want to have a squawking bird or dirty dishes or whatever it is in the background. You don't want to be doing this the whole time. Like, good screen presence means you've cleaned up after yourself of what they can see, which I did this morning before I got on this call, and that you are aware of just how you're presenting yourself, with the screens wobbly, that kind of thing. Also, make sure that you and the potential partner comply with communication guidelines if you're in a restricted access country. Really, really important. And then probably the most important thing is making that personal connection at the beginning of the appointment. Invest at least 10 minutes at the beginning, asking them questions that get to know them, because tapping into the connection that they have with you and tapping into their motivational themes is super important. And remember, you're not asking people to support you or to feed your family. What you're doing is you're inviting them to invest in the kingdom in ways that they might otherwise not have an opportunity. So whether it's an initial ask, an increased ask, or an ask for referrals, make it a clear ask that's tied to impact and that's easy to respond to. All right, we've touched on this like multiple times, but the most incredibly important part of this process is follow-up. Ideally, you want to be following up with those you haven't heard from or who haven't made a firm decision, like Kiley and Jenny both said, every 3 days. And it doesn't have to be the same medium. It can be phone, text, email, Facebook, any other messaging app. Just cycle through those different options and be reaching out to them every 3 days to communicate the urgency of the response. Again, don't just sit back and expect them to do the work for you. We polled some of our former international veteran clients to ask them what they found to be successful when they're following up on the field. So 100% of them say that following up in different ways is best. They found that texting tends to be the quickest way to get a hold of someone, because text messages have a 45% response rate, while email only has a 6% response rate. And 90% of all texts are open within 3 minutes. If you're in another time zone, consider the timing of your correspondence. Time it so that there are better chances of the potential partner seeing that message in the morning when they wake up, even if that means that it's the middle of the night for you. Remember that people are busy and they're not running into you in the States like they normally would. So you've got to make multiple touches before you actually connect with someone. So the apps that our clients most use are for messages. They use Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, and text message. And then for calling, connecting, and presenting, they use Skype, Google Hangouts, Zoom, FaceTime, and Ring Central. And you know what else they use? Because you can now make voice calls through Facebook Messenger, they use that as well, because you can make voice calls to anywhere in the world with Facebook Messenger. So all of these touches, though, you're multiple reaching out every 3 days, all of these things, you've got to set a plan in place so that it's not super confusing for you. You've got to track each point of connection so that you know and your partner knows what's the next step. And then we have a little bit of other feedback, some more tips from our clients. One said, communicate regularly with your partners. Include stories of what the father's doing on the field. Another one wanted to encourage you by just letting you know not to get discouraged by slower than normal progress. He found that often, unless he's focused on fundraising, it doesn't really happen very much. Another one said, work with a coach. Woohoo! Set aside time in your schedule for regular fundraising activity. And lastly, when you go home on furlough, make sure you visit your partners.
So Richard asked the question, what's the most secure mode of video chat? I'm going to go with none of them. VC is one, the letter V and then SEE is one that I've heard is pretty secure, but honestly, I don't think I would trust any of them. Just, be careful with your language and, be careful what you say. Obviously, it's a little trickier when you're connecting with someone else, like they may say those things. But Zoom, what we're using for this webinar is great. They have free accounts that limit to 40-minute meetings, and you can share screen. I'm pretty sure, does Skype have share screen? I'm trying to remember. Anyway,
yes,
it does. Okay. And there's a lot of free options. So, that shouldn't be an issue at all. Oh, hi, Madison, by the way. Good to see you or see your name. Okay, so keep the questions coming. We've got just 13 minutes left and we want to respect everyone's time. And so we want to make sure we get through the content. But we are going to stay, or at least I know I can stay for a bit after, because we really want to make sure all of your questions get answered. So if you have questions, we'll stay a little bit longer past sharing all of the content just to get through those questions. So we'd love for you to stay on. So just dump all those in and we'll definitely get to them. So let's talk a little more in depth about networking. So let's say you're one of those people that has 100 people on your newsletter list and half of them are already partnered. You are going to need to grow that. And for those of you who have already thought through your newsletter list, you're going to have to make those connections. You want to start with your current partners. Who can your current partners connect you to? Definitely reach out to all of them and ask if they can help connect you to people who have that similar passion for what the Father is doing, for the global work, for the particular work that you are a part of. Okay, so connecting to their family, their friends, other fellowships, small groups, because your partners are invested, right? They may also be invested in helping you connect to other people. So finding a video chat, Zoom or Skype. Facebook now also has video options to meet with a small group or a fellowship, have them join the call. If you regularly have horrible internet access, another option is to record yourself, make a video of a presentation, and then send that video in so they can watch it, and maybe just be available via Facebook for questions, that way. So that's another option as well, is just record yourself and then send that if your internet is just regularly terrible. Another person you can ask is a leader of a fellowship. Maybe they're part of a group of leaders and they could connect you. Or maybe they just know other fellowships in the area that have a really strong tie to overseas work, to global ministry, and could make that introduction. And a simple email introduction. So just email us, email them and say, hey, I want to introduce you to these people. Here's what they're doing. And then you've got that connection and you can begin to follow up. Another option is reaching out to all of your social media friends. If they're not on your newsletter list, get them on your newsletter list. A great place to start. Build your newsletter list constantly. When you make a new connection, say, hey, would you like to be on our newsletter list? Even with fellowships. It's something a lot of people miss, but even with fellowships, if you make a connection, they're not able to partner financially, just say, hey, could we send you our newsletters? And someone had asked about the importance of newsletters. Yes, they're important, partly because they're expected. But if you can join the newsletter webinar next month, highly recommend it. It's in the afternoon stateside, so that might knock some of you out. But yeah, we'll go a lot in depth on newsletters there. And finally, if you don't know who else to ask, just start cold calling. We have actually seen this be more effective than we realized with fellowships. If you are in the area, if you're from the area, just saying, hey, so thankful for your investment in the community in Pennsylvania. We are from Pennsylvania and we are workers in this location, and we want to know if your church would be interested in having an impact in this area, right? So it's not just, make it about the impact. Connect them. We want to know if you want to expand your reach beyond Pennsylvania and be a part of the work that's happening in Africa. So that kind of language, just reach out. You never know what the Father is going to do through that. And it's a lot easier for him to work when we are mobile.
Yeah. And don't forget about the small ones too. They might be small, but often they are super mighty. I actually had a client who was driving home from a partnership meeting, and he saw a church on the side of the road. It was Wednesday night. He walked in the door, a little teeny tiny church, had dinner with them, and walked out with a $100 partnership. You never know. So we want to switch into talking about clubs or fellowships. And we want to take a quick poll before we do. So how have you connected with senior teachers of these clubs or fellowships in the past? Has it been through Facebook, email, phone, a physical letter, or in person? And maybe likely there's some of those things that you've done repeatedly, different ones, but let's just think about what is your first point of contact perhaps with a senior teacher in the past? All right, when you reach out to a fellowship or a club, make it as personal as possible, because you're not the only worker who's coming home. So start by finding out who the best person is to connect with. It may not be the senior teacher. Maybe it is, but maybe there's a committee head that you need to contact. If at all possible, call that person. It could be through Skype, an international phone number, FaceTime, or any other app that allows phone calls. And then follow up by emailing the person, letting them know that you've tried calling and that you'd like to visit that club or fellowship this summer, and then share whatever your request is. So there are several things that you might run a request. Before we get to those, our results are in. So how have you connected with senior teachers in the past? Most through email, but we're having a little bit of a tie through in-person and email. I think that's fantastic that you do it in person. Just walking in there, seeing your face is so important, because they get so many emails, they get multiple packets across their desk. So having that personal connection with you, if at all possible, is awesome. Great job, you guys. All right, so things that you could ask from a fellowship or a club. Sharing with the congregation during one or even all of their services. You could request to put up a table with information like brochures or cards that have requests to lift up, newsletter sign-up list, etc. I like to encourage my clients to think through their 5 senses when they're putting up a table. So if there are unique things to taste or to touch, or even clothing that you want to wear from your country, by all means, bring those things with you. You also could connect with smaller groups like Sunday school classes, or think about a group that meets together regularly for intercession, or maybe your club or fellowship has a small group, community group type of atmosphere where there's lots of little small groups going on. However, be aware that a lot of those small groups take a break over the summer, so it might limit your options or make scheduling with them a little bit more difficult. But if that senior teacher is willing to connect you, have them send an email introducing you and the work, and then you follow up right away. That's the best way to do it. You could reach out directly, but that reference from that senior teacher, if you have one, goes a long way in giving you credibility. If you share with a small group, we recommend that you have a response card for each person to fill out. This is a great thing to have on every seat, and make sure that you have an option on that card for people to mark, I'm not interested at this time. The idea is that you're getting a response from every single person, and you know exactly how to follow up with them. So boxes could be, I'd like to intercede for you. I'd like to partner financially. I'd like to be on your newsletter list. You might ask them for all of their contact information, including even social media that they're on, and then have that box for, no, I'm not interested, just because you kind of look like a jerk if you're the only one who's not filling something out. And the other thing you could put on there is something that I learned today, or I enjoyed learning about such and such, or wow, this was a compelling part of your presentation, just to get, you're asking for comments, right? So it's a comment card or a response card. Another thing that you might want to do is to speak to the committee about a new or an increased financial partnership or their consideration in a one-time gift. One more thing that you can ask for is to be included on their requests. If they have a group of intercessors, or if they have a chain that they send to lift things up, it's a great way to raise awareness around the work that you're doing and its needs, and it also keeps that fellowship or that club connected.
All right, we have 4 minutes left. I'm going to blow through this information. We had such a challenge in putting this webinar together because there were so many things we wanted to talk about and address, because obviously we have such a heart for veterans. So I'm going to go through this really fast on creating a plan for fundraising while you're on furlough. Some of you are heading back this summer to raise funds. It's so important that you begin setting up your plans now. Please do not wait until you arrive back, maybe in your passport country, wherever you're going, to start connecting with people. Make those connections now. Let people know the dates that you're going to be there and start reaching out to set that up. Another really important part of furlough that you need to think through is, what is your goal? What is your goal for furlough? And I want to point out, this may not be a fundraising goal. For some of you, it may. For others, it might be the goal of resting. If that's the case, you better let everyone know that that's your goal. For my husband and I and our daughter, we came back very burnt out, really, really bad. And we let everyone know, we are not going to see you. Our goal is to rest, because we want to return healthy. So that our goal was rest, and we let everyone know. And because we communicated that ahead of time, and we stayed in really good communication prior to that, we did not have a single partner drop off, even though we were stateside for 5 months and didn't see most people. Okay, so find out what your goal is and make sure that you're sharing that. Sorry, looking at what to cut. But for a lot of you, especially if you're here, you probably are needing to raise funds. So thinking through how much you are wanting to raise. So another poll question to help you think about that: how much in additional monthly partnerships? Okay, so of course one time we'll have an option for that, but under 500 is all you need to raise. You've got between 500 to 1,000, 1,000 to 2,000, or 2,000 plus that you're needing to raise. And of course, not an option for some of you that don't have that need. So what is your goal? Go ahead and answer that. If you need to do more work on your budget before you know that number, make it happen this week. Again, start the plan now. Don't wait until your trip, because most of the time it's a very small window and there's not time for all of that. So start planning now. In a newsletter or an email, or when you're meeting with someone, you could use this number. We are looking to raise an additional $1,000 in monthly partnerships. And again, tie it to impact right away in order to see this impact happen. You may also want to think through specific amounts that you want to ask people for. We've seen this be incredibly effective. Is asking, a certain number of people to consider an amount. So we're looking for 10 partners to partner at $100 a month. We are looking to add 30 new people to our newsletter list. We are looking to add 2 new clubs or fellowships. So thinking through, what are the specifics that you want to see? The specifics really help people. Okay, so we're pretty split right across. So a quarter under 500, a quarter in just about each section. So great, know that number and begin communicating it. Also begin writing down dates as you track your timeline. You want to be reaching out to people at least 3 weeks before you arrive, especially if it's summer. You're going to want to start those conversations soon. Okay, so write down that date 3 weeks before you arrive. When is that? That's the date you need to start reaching out to people. Okay, the second date to write down is a month before you arrive. This is when you need to be sending letters and emails, okay? Actually reaching out to people so that 3 weeks before you're following up. Okay, that should be your first follow-up option, is 3 weeks, reaching out a month before. Okay, so think that through all the way through your timeline. The next date you need to think about is, if you need to get emails and letters out a month before, when do you need to start writing them? Now I can write stuff really fast. 5 years ago, it took me a little while. So for some of you, it might be a process to write your letter. So begin thinking, when do you need to start that process so that you can have it done? Okay, this takes a lot of planning, but again, be intentional with these relationships and really think this through. Okay, so then there's one more thing that needs to happen before people receive your letter, and that's to send out your a general newsletter, some sort of public announcement that says, we're coming back for a visit. And this is where you can communicate what your goal is. You can communicate maybe what locations you're going to be in, but give people a heads up. There may even be some partners you're not going to be able to see. Let them know that. You know, go ahead and say, we're so sorry we're not going to make it to California, you know, to see these people, and maybe even reach out personally to let them know you're not going to be able to make that connection. Communicate your plans is key. All right, we're at the top of the hour. We know some of you need to go. We're moving into kind of closing out. And again, we'll stay on. So any questions that you guys have, we are happy to answer. I can stay on for as long as there are questions coming. So I'm happy to stay here with you guys. But Kiley, you mind closing this out?
Yeah, so really appreciate you guys being with us. And we want to just reflect a little bit on what we've experienced today. And we'd love to hear from you guys. So if you don't mind, please share in the chat. So not the Q&A, but in the chat, so we can all kind of benefit from it. What is something in this webinar that has been helpful for you? We'd love to hear from you about that in the chat. And as we mentioned earlier, some of you may be thinking that this was helpful, but might need a little bit more help in getting started. So as we mentioned at the beginning, we have a free analysis tool that we'd like to share with everyone on this call. And Jenny, if you wouldn't mind, while I'm working through this, just helping us with that link in the chat, all you need to do is just fill out a form with a helpful tip or practice from something that from Tailored, along with the results of this discipline or tip. So just something that's been helpful for you, and then the results of that helpful tip, and you'll receive that tool with your submission. So there's a link in the chat box you can click on for that. That's that free analysis tool, that first link. But another thing is, we also want to invite you to start working with a tailored coach. I know one of the feedback from a former client that we had shared was just get a coach. There's a lot of information, and you guys have to work through this on a daily basis. So we would love the opportunity to not only help you create a plan for furlough or fundraising, but to actually walk with you as you execute it. That's a key piece of success. So please reach out. You can click on a different link that's going in the chat now, and that'll let us know if you're interested in meeting to discuss how we can best serve you and what a coaching relationship looks like. So that's that second link. It ends with the Let's Talk piece. But that is just to get a little more information about having a tailored coach, us learning how we can help you and those kinds of things. So be looking out for those two things in the chat. Yeah, it's been great to have you guys. We're going to hang around for as long as we need to. Spend the rest of our time answering any questions you all have. So please put those questions in the Q&A box, and we're going to do the rest of do our best the rest of the time to kind of answer those. Let me go ahead and throw a few questions out there to Deb and Jenny, if you guys don't mind.
Absolutely. Well, actually, do you mind if I read just some of the highlights people are walking away?
Absolutely, please.
Just love to acknowledge that. So Andy says the follow-up every 3 days. Andrew confirms that it's okay to follow up every 3 days. It really is, I promise. Segmenting is really helpful. Good reminder to keep working on partnership development, even if you need more funds. That's so key. You know, what's the point of bringing on more partners if you really don't have a good system for taking care of the ones you already have? You know, really dig into that. Love it. Example messages for each segment. The idea of sending a video. So again, there were so many things we wanted to talk about. But we only have an hour, and we're excited to continue to dive into your questions. So don't hesitate to just keep asking. If you have time and you want to stick on, we're here.
Yeah, perfect. Jean-Paul asked, and I'm going to need you guys' help in referencing this real quick. What's the difference between the letters in number 2 and 3, and maybe a clarification? Those are different kinds of letters is the question, between 2, 3, 4, and 5?
Yeah, like the different segments.
Yes, I believe
I'm going to assume that that's talking about. So the difference in the letters, honestly, is just acknowledging what they've done. So if you have had a partner, a current partner you're asking to increase, you're going to acknowledge, thank you so much for your current partnership. Because of you, here's what we've seen happen. The rest of the letter is going to be very, very similar. So the only difference is that acknowledgement of what they've already done, because of your partnership in the past, or thank you so much for your investment in this ministry, in 2017. Would you consider giving again this coming year? So that's the only difference in the letter, is that you're just acknowledging the relationship they've already had.
Perfect. Thank you. Richard just threw something up about most helpful in the Q&A. So he mentions laying out the practical aspects of and the timeline for how to plan well for the furlough, like taking your furlough date and backing up from that 3 weeks before, 1 month before. Yeah. Excellent tip there. Thanks for sharing that, Richard. A question from Alice from a while ago. What's the best way to seek referrals?
Hey, you guys, I'm going to jump off and go check on the patient. And I have a session coming up. It was great to be with everybody today.
Thank you, Deb.
All right, see ya.
Tell John we're lifting him up.
Sure will.
Yeah, I think we probably answered that question.
Okay.
But sorry, Kiley, can you repeat that question one more time?
Just the best way to seek out referrals?
Yeah. So start with current partners, fellowship leaders, the people that you already know, asking, can you connect us to someone? And like Deb said, not everyone is geared to be a host. But just very, very simple, saying, hey, who are other people you think might get excited about being a part of this work? That's usually a better question than just, hey, who do you think can partner financially? Because people can get hung up on the money piece. So ask, hey, who else do you know that might be excited about being a part of what's happening, in Germany? And then say, could you introduce me person via email? Okay, start that introduction. Maybe they do want to host and they're good at that. But what we've seen is that very few people are actually good at hosting and making sure people get there. They have a hard time following up with people themselves, so, but again, even if 1 or 2 people can come, that's 1 or 2 partners that you didn't have before. So it can still be a really great connection.
Excellent. Let's see. I just want to touch on John Paul again. I was meaning the fundraising letters, create a plan for furlough now screen. There seems to be 4 letters mentioned. Sorry, just to go back to that, Jenny. Is that what you were referencing before?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the different segments. Yeah.
Yep. Excellent. I hope that was helpful, Jean Paul. If not, you can email us and we can help explain further.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got another question. I have an opportunity to speak to many groups of people at once. I am a speaker and it's hard for me to get contacts of 200 to 500 people at the same time. Only a few sign up on the sign-up sheet. What is the best way to take advantage of this kind of opportunity?
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit more about the response cards, because we have seen this be so much more effective than a sign-up sheet, primarily because you're making it super easy for people. With the response card, the idea is ideally it's in every chair when people come. Not all fellowships want you to do this, but just ask if that's an option, and let them know, like, we've seen this be so much more effective than the sign-up list, because if you have a sign-up list, even if you pass around, it's easy to just pass it on. Or if you have it in the back, after a service or a presentation, people get so distracted. So even if they are interested, they may not take time to go back, and they may think, oh, I'll reach out later, which then they never do. So we want to make it as easy as possible. And that's a huge part of fundraising, of partnership development, is what obstacles can I eliminate, or what work can I do for the partner to make it easier for them to connect? Okay, so response cards are awesome. And they don't have to be fancy. Actually, I've seen people who have tried to put a lot of work in them, and I almost like them less because it's too busy. My response are black and white. They're super simple because I'm a very simple person. And it says, you know, you can say like response card or partnership response or something like that. But it asks for their name, their physical address, their email, their phone number. And then it has all the boxes of options that you want them to be a part of. So just walk through this, but I'm going to walk through it again because I know it's probably quick. I'm interested in, you know, giving financially towards this work. If you want to make it more impact focused, I think Debs usually say like, I'm interested in spreading the good news through a financial partnership. I'm interested in being a part of your intercessory team. Now, if you don't have that, don't put that on there. I'm interested in joining the newsletter list. I'm interested in being in your secret Facebook group. And then again, an option that says, I'm not interested in anything at this time. And then walk through that card. It only takes 30 to 60 seconds, but actually walk through the card with people. So at the end of your presentation, and if someone else wants to walk them through it, like a leader of a fellowship, even better, but just walk through the whole thing. So say, all right, we're going to take the next 30 seconds and we want to hear from you. We want to know what, you know, if you're interested in getting connected to this work in any way. So on your chair, you found a response card. Please pick that up and let's go ahead and fill this out together. We would love to have all of your contact information so we can make sure to stay connected in all of those different ways, including your physical mailing address. But for those of you who are thinking, well, I'm not really interested, that's okay. There's a box for you too. If you can just put your name, we don't need any contact information, and then just mark that box that says I'm not interested. But for those of you that are interested in something, mark those boxes. If you're interested in a financial partnership, if you're interested in being on our newsletter list, interested in joining our intercessory team, go ahead and mark those boxes. We just want to know how you want to stay connected and make sure that we get you connected right away. We want to follow up with all of those who do fill these out to make a strong connection. And it also helps us know who not to follow up with. So please, you know, go ahead, put your name, mark those boxes. Once you're finished, and then tell them what to do with it. This is important. Don't have them get up and take it somewhere. Literally from their seats, we're going to say, okay, perfect. So if you can pass those once, you know, you're done, pass them to the center aisle, or maybe there's volunteers that are going to walk around and collect them. Give them instructions literally from their seat. They have the card already. We're giving them time to fill it out. We're telling them, you know, so they don't even have to move to do any of those things. I was talking to a client yesterday, and she's 2 speakers. One speaker passed out the cards, but didn't walk anyone through what to do with it. She got literally 0. Like not a single person submitted a response card. The other guy walked it. He walked away with 30 cards, and more than half of those marked a financial partnership.
Wow.
And that also makes follow-up so easy because they're telling you what they want. Not having to then follow up and say, oh, are you interested? You know, kind of feel a little sheepish sometimes of like knowing how to reach out. They're telling you I want a financial partnership. So then you can reach out and say, great, like, thank you so much for your interest in a financial partnership and being on our newsletter list. Here are the ways you can get in. Maybe if you have time, you even set up a time with them, get to learn more about their passion. So response cards are huge.
Excellent.
David or someone had said, do we have an example of a response card you can download? Honestly, our example is literally black and white, super plain text. So just contact info and then all the little boxes, that's it. It's
Perfect.
really
Perfect.
Yeah.
Sherry asked kind of a unique question. Deb typed an answer, but I think we may have misunderstood that. Sherry, sorry about that. But what advice do you have as we don't return to a home church, home area on furlough, as we have been on the field for many years and live in our ministry area now? The furlough visit doesn't apply.
Okay, so there's never an area where you visit.
I'm assuming that's we live in the ministry area now. We don't return back
Anywhere.
to sort of where we were sent from, and
Yeah. I mean, then your only option is to do everything everything virtually. So essentially think about, if I were there in person, what would I do, and how do I utilize technology to simulate that as much as possible. So if I were going to present to a group, if I were there in person, but I can't, okay, I'm going to say, hey, can I present to your group via Skype? I actually hate Skype, but but it's really popular and common and easy.
Yep.
So it can sometimes be an easy one. I love Zoom. So, think of it that way.
Yep.
So, okay, great. How can I, or, maybe I record a video and I send it and say, hey, could you show this video, and ask them to print out response cards? Obviously that takes someone who's really willing to partner with you in the work, because they're doing a lot of the work. But you can identify those people. So think through that way. Instead of sending a physical letter, if that's not an option, let's do an email, a Facebook message. Skype does actually have really affordable calling options. You can buy Skype credit and make phone calls, or you can actually call, someone's cell phone. Line, LINE, the number 2 is another app. It costs money, but I think it's like $10 a month. And if you have a US-based cell phone, you can tie it, and as long as you have internet access, then you can call, you can text. That's what I used. I loved it. So there's a lot of apps like that that you can get access to that are really affordable or even free. So find them, get them, and start reaching out and making some connections.
Excellent. Jenny, I have another appointment I've got to jump to, but we've got a couple more questions in the Q&A. Lori asks, what do you recommend to keep track of the donor info, or a database that is easy and simple to use?
Yes. So this is actually something Tailored has started working on our own system, because we haven't found anything that is good. It's been beta tested. Feel free, jump on. I honestly recommend just using a spreadsheet. I know it's not super, techie or fabulous, but especially in the fundraising process, most donor management systems are really frustrating, because you have to click a name, open their account, open notes to see what's happened. A simple spreadsheet is so much easier, where you can just see everyone's name, who you need to follow up with. You can highlight colors or add labels, that kind of thing. So a spreadsheet tends to actually be a lot more simple to use and figure out, and create it exactly the way you want it. But there are some donor management that can also link with finances. So Donor Perfect, Donor Elf is one that's pretty simple and great. These cost money, but I think they're still pretty affordable. TNT is one that's free. It's a guy who was just like, man, people need help. And so it's totally free. It's not pretty, partly because it's very, very basic, but it's a great one. And especially if you're looking for something free, TNT can work just fine. And I think you can even set tasks and reminders, and you can mark people's birthdays and things like that. So I would check out TNT to start. But if you find, someone mentioned Donor Manager, Melanie, thank you, is also a free option. So there are donor softwares that are out there, but I love me just a good old spreadsheet paper person. So my husband makes fun of me because I literally create a spreadsheet and print it off. But I love the question, because it's important to find a system that works for you, and one that you'll actually use. Okay, Jennifer. Oh, hey, Jen. Oh yeah, MP also, you can load donations and it's free. Yep, how do people, so MPDX, I'm going to put that MPDX in the chat. Yes, I miss you too, Jen. Okay, someone else asked, talk a little more about specific types of posts on social media. Yes, struggle with knowing what to have social media friends, followers that are ministry recipients here on the field. Yes, it can be uncomfortable posting stories. Yeah, when other people might see it, absolutely. Also seems like everyone I know is selling some sort of direct marketing health product. I know if I get invited to one more essential oils party, I'm like going to lose it. Yeah, so you don't use it as marketing. So there's a lot of so many different ways to use social media. A lot of times people will have like a separate ministry page so that they can just have here. People are basically like, if you join this page, it's because you want ministry updates. So that's one option, is to have a totally separate ministry page. I didn't do that, partly because I didn't want to have to keep track of another. Again, I'm a simple person. I like being simple. So if you're using your personal page as your only one, then I would just have a nice rotation through a few different things. One, just personal family stuff, what you're doing on a regular basis. Nothing wrong with, taking a selfie or a picture of food. I know that gets made fun of, but there's nothing wrong with that. As long as it's balanced. The other thing to post about is culture. If you're somewhere that is not America, and sometimes even in America, I've got people that are working with Native American tribes, so there's a different culture there. Talk about the culture. What are the holidays that are happening? What's the clothing? Maybe describe the scene. Taking a video, 10-second video, super simple. Doesn't have to be professional at all. Just grab your phone. New Year in Asia, good heavens, so much fun. You've got lions dancing in the street and the drums are pounding, and so just taking a quick little video of like, oh, here's what's happening. Like, oh, so much fun. So thankful for everyone for being a part of this. Love you, miss you, bye. Super simple. People love that because they get an image of what it's like to be there. So that's huge. Start doing videos. Even if it's once a month that you're doing a video, it's really, really great. And you'll get a lot of likes, a lot of interaction around those. So videos are awesome around and creating that culture here, teaching people about the culture. And then the other piece is the ministry. And you can be about this on social media. If you're going to share specific stories, I recommend doing it more in like an email newsletter list type of format, but also like get permission to share those stories. Or, maybe like change the name to protect that person's identity and their privacy, but be sensitive to that. Don't just be blasting people's personal information. So usually we stay away from all of the personal details on social media, unless you've gotten permission, the person knows, you've been really, you've had a lot of integrity around that to share. But you can even just simple things like taking a picture of your classroom with or without students. If you don't want to show people's faces, you could even just take a picture of the classroom without the students and say, so thankful to pour into the lives of these students today. Your partners are going to know what you're talking about. Your partners are going to make that connection of, oh, this is the work that we're a part of. So you don't have to be super overt for it to be great. Thank you for joining, Daniel. Have a good one. And if you are in, like, something that we did is when we had over and there was like a pile of shoes outside the front door, we took a picture of the pile of shoes and we just said, so thankful for the dozens of students that these shoes represent, so thankful to host, this group, or when our garage was filled with bicycles. There's things like that you can take pictures of without being really overt or without naming a person, that's showing the work that's happening. But get on social media. I know a lot of people hate it, but you can make things, and it's a great way to stay in front of people on a regular basis. Oh, I lost my question box. Let me find it. Any other questions? I think I answered them all. I am happy to stay on if anyone has any other questions, but thank you guys so much for joining us. Tailoredfundraising.com is our website. We have a blog on there that we're posting on regularly that has great tips. Webinar list is on there for future webinars. Hey, is it Corky? Is that, I was going to say Corinne, but yeah, good to have you as well. So check out our other webinars. And every year we also share, we reach out and say, hey, what did you not hear that you want to hear more about? So we're constantly writing new webinars. we want to make sure we're meeting you guys where you're at and sharing that information. If you are interested in getting slides or recording, we don't freely share the recording. It's kind of on a case-by-case basis. But I'm going to put an email address in the chat. If you will email Lindsay, just your request, what you're wanting, why you're wanting it, then on that case-by-case basis, we'll share that information with you. But thank you guys so much for joining. We hope to see you again soon. God bless. Bye.